Hey guys, we are here. I'm here with Dr. Jessica Higgins, and I am, goes in and out, Beth says. Hi, Beth. We're totally having trouble Zooming onto Facebook, so I'm here recording on my iPhone while she's on the computer in front of me. Technology, yay. So guys, say hello in the chat box. Let us know you're here and that you can hear us okay. We're going to be talking, Jessica is not only a dear friend of mine, but she is also an incredible relationship coach and expert, and she has a podcast called the Empowered Relationship Podcast. And I thought it would be fun for us to come on today and just talk about just relationships during this time of quarantine. And I've had some of my clients kind of sharing with me that they're struggling right now, that they're home with their partners and they're getting on each other's last nerve. So I thought it would be fun for us to hop on and just talk about that. So anyway, so let's just jump in. So Jess, what have you been noticing most with your clients at this time? Any like challenges they're having or things that they're sharing with you around their relationships?
Yeah. Well, I think most of us are being impacted by all the uncertainty, and we don't know what things are going to look like and the stress. So that just amplifies. And I think, as we all know, when we are feeling stressed, we typically kind of regress perhaps, and we feel more triggered and activated. And that's the fight, flight, or freeze response. And that's a great response because it keeps us safe. It
Right.
helps us feel like we can protect, and it's very, very quick, right? It's designed to give us that quick response
Yeah.
so we can be safe. But what ends up happening is our field of vision, if you will, or our sense of awareness gets really restricted because our whole motivation at that point is just to be protected and survive.
Right.
So how this looks in relationship, it gets really tricky because a lot of us, unless we've done a lot of self-work, don't always recognize when we're activated or aroused or triggered.
Mm-hmm.
And where this gets compounded is, my husband and I notice this, even if he reacts to something, I'm already in a millisecond reacting to his reaction. And then I'm reacting to him and he's reacting to me. And then it's this upward kind of disconnect. And typically reaction isn't gonna bring connection.
Right.
And so I think, we might be stressed and we might be in a fear-based place. So I've had clients tell me that they're watching things on social media and feeling really compassionate and empathetic to people's stories when they're experiencing a lot of hardship.
Right.
And then turning to, so in this case, the woman, I only work with her. So most people I work with a couple, but I work with just her around relationship concerns. I might work with him as well in the future, but that's another aside. So what his move was, is he basically said, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. It's not a big deal. We're going to get through this. We're both healthy. We're both strong, which in of itself is a great reassurance. But at that moment,
Yeah.
her heart was hurting and she was feeling a lot of pain and wanted to feel his understanding and wanted to feel seen.
Right.
But with her, what I'm helping her recognize is sometimes she doesn't always reveal and give him a chance to see the emotional tone or the emotional need. So
Right.
he's not responding to it. So he's responding to the content, but not actually recognizing her emotional need around, like, I'm scared. And she's
Right.
got a particular background that makes that even more challenging. So it's
Right.
like, can you just hear how I'm hurting? And can you give me that safe space to just be heard? So that's one example. I think this just puts people in a like pressure cooker,
Yeah.
and it's really a huge challenge for people to deal with what they're maybe already challenged with, but
Yeah.
this is turning up the volume in a really
Right.
significant way.
Yeah.
So people have a difficult time asking for alone time, right? Like
Yes.
needing some space and being able to say, like, this is what it would do for me and this is how it would help, rather than I'm rejecting you.
Right.
So those are just a couple examples.
Yeah. So some of the things that my clients have been sharing with me, one who she was sharing how you know, her and her boyfriend, they live together, are both approaching this in such a different way. And she's like, let's meditate and let's do this and let's do that. And he's kind of going into his pattern of drinking, watching TV, like completely numbing out. And she's finding herself judging him and feeling really challenged by that because she's concerned about his health. She's concerned about his well-being. And so I was talking to her about how to kind of approach it, but like in a situation like that where she's feeling one way, he's feeling another, what do couples need to do to kind of come together to find like some kind of like support for one another and be able to acknowledge how the other one's feeling without trying to control it or change it?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, just to the point of control, oftentimes when we are in a fear place, the knee-jerk reaction is to try to control, to feel some relief. And in partnership, this just gets even more pronounced because we're living with each other and they're like this beautiful mirror. And so we want to give them feedback so that we might feel better. And I think in those instances, the exact kind of situation you're describing, there is research that shows men are able to process and it gives them a testosterone boost when they watch TV. And I get that there's some balance here, right? If he's not maybe taking care of himself and his overall health needs, then yeah, as a significant other, that would be concerning. But to just, I guess my first thought would be to be gentle with each other and recognize we all have different ways of reacting, different ways of kind of calming our nervous system, and different ways of processing what feels really threatening. So that would be my first thought. My second thought would be to encourage your partner, or excuse me, encourage your client who is being really proactive in these self-care techniques and perhaps what she's wanting to feel with her partner, to identify that emotional need. Because again, where so often couples go awry is they don't share that emotional need and it's a misattunement.
Right.
So it's whether or not it's health is such a high priority for me and it's such a high value and I want to
Yeah.
feel that we're in alignment and we're both practicing that and that I can, we can share in that together. Or I don't think you're as available and I want time for us to connect and I don't know how to reach you when you're watching TV. There could be many reasons why she might be critical of him, but if she can kind of drop into the emotional need, I think he would be way more responsive because
Yeah.
he can attune to, yeah, I get it, that health is important, or
Yeah.
I am available to you and I really do want to respond to you. And let's make some time for that. Or if her concern is, I'm worried you're avoiding this and you're not really working through your own fear. And maybe it's like, I would love to hold a space where we can talk about our fears together and it would help me feel like we're in this together and
Right.
can support each other. I think he could respond to that. But when we go into blame and criticism,
Yes.
that's where we're going to be
Are.
defensive and we feel misunderstood and there's a misattunement.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So actually, Reed Peterson jumped on and he said, I would like to ask a question. So you guys, everyone who's live here, I apologize for the weird setup, but Jessica and I couldn't get on to Facebook through Zoom Live. So I'm holding up my iPhone to record us while I'm on live on my phone. So Reed asks, how can we communicate how can we communicate to our partners in a supportive way to practice good hygiene? That's a great question.
Okay. Would that be like brushing your teeth or
I don't know.
showering?
Reed, is that like physical hygiene, emotional hygiene? Like he just said good hygiene. I'm guessing he's meaning physical. I mean, I
Uh-huh.
guess that's usually probably where the first place most people go, right? Is their physical hygiene?
Right. Okay. So the first thing that comes up for me when I hear that is right now in our current climate with the COVID-19, some people, this is another source of conflict, are taking it very, very seriously, washing their hands, making sure they're washing and disinfecting their surroundings, where other people are not taking it as seriously and are being more casual. And that is a real point of contention. And if we can follow that thread, again, it would be a similar recommendation to talk about the emotions underneath that, because again, this is where connection, if we can talk about our deeper emotional need,
Yeah.
that's what brings people close. That's the place of connection. When we don't speak to that deeper emotional need, we can describe, we can give story, we can give exemplification of and leverage and pull people and get the survey around, this is what's important, all these people say, and we can get into this power struggle. But
Right.
honestly, at the end of the day, we all have different perspectives and are accessing different sources of information, and we can get into right and wrong. And that's typically not going to bring people close. So if we look at attuning to each other, like, what is it that's important to you? What is it that you're emotionally feeling? Can I tap into that? Can you help me if I can't, if it's unclear? Can you help me with how come washing your hands, or how come whatever the hygiene example is?
He said showering, etc. So physical hygiene.
Okay, well, I mean, okay, so I'll pivot to that, which, I'll just say, if my spouse was not showering, I think probably the thing that would impact me the most is if I felt like he was smelly,
Right.
because I want to feel attracted to him. And if I was feeling turned off by his smell,
Yeah.
then that would be something that would feel like I want to address. So I would probably lean towards saying, this is sensitive, right? I get that
Right.
this is a tricky, like,
Well, Reed, I'm
terrain.
actually curious, Reed, are you asking this question out of like safety for one another because of the COVID virus? Or are you asking the question based on like how you feel in the same room with someone who has like body odor or something? I'm just so curious where he's asking the question from, just because obviously, right? I mean, I'm sure the answer could be similar, but
Yeah.
if it's like a matter of I'm not attracted to you, or a matter of like I'm scared to touch you because I'm afraid you have the virus on your body because you've been out in the public or walking or out
Right.
grocery shopping, right? That could be a
Right.
different conversation. So
Well, Melissa, like, just even between you and me, again, between friends, like, this is a
yeah,
harder
it is.
zone to kind
It
of get
is.
feedback around. But if I was like, you know, I want to have a conversation with you, and if I was to say, look, you don't seem like you're showering, I'm concerned about you, I don't know what's going on, and I think you need to shower more often, and, that's not even as critical as I could get,
Right.
you're probably going to feel some rise of like, you don't know what's going on for me. And feel some level of defensiveness.
Right.
Whereas if I was like, you mean so much to me, and I love being able to hug you and feel close. And I have noticed a time or two where I've noticed a smell, and
Right.
I kind of backed off,
An odor emanating.
an odor emanating. And I really want to be close to you, but I also know that it's hard. I feel uncomfortable sometimes when I smell something.
Right.
And I know it's really hard for me to bring up, but more than anything, I want to be close to you.
Yeah.
And and so I don't know what your response would be, but I imagine the second would be a little more,
Yeah.
you could tune into what is it that I need and what is it that I'm wanting, and you could respond to that versus my judgment of you.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that about responding to what the person's needing and wanting versus the judgment, which I think a lot of us, just in our communication with one another in relationship, we haven't been taught how to communicate from more that need and want emotional place. We kind of go into the accusatory or blaming or that, that kind of place. So Reed said, men can get lazy sometimes. I like how he's calling himself out. And it's easy to forget to brush your teeth when your routines are not as clear. Well, this is kind of funny because I think there were a couple of us joking the other day. Jess, I can't remember where we were, but saying something about like how when we work from home, like sometimes we're like good on the top and we have pajama bottoms on, or like sometimes we won't shower all day or we won't brush our teeth all day until we're like ready to leave the house because we work from home and sometimes we don't think about it, or we're just like, oh, I'll do it later or whatever. I'm home. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think I like that Reed is asking this because now that people are in closer quarters and they're home together all the time, right?
Well, I mean, this is an example, like my husband and I, when we are waking up in the morning and there's some interest in cuddling and being affectionate and perhaps even kissing. And I will ask him, would you mind brushing your teeth? I feel
Right.
more comfortable if we both brush our teeth. And so again, it's in service of connection and that emotional attunement of, I want to feel really open and comfortable kissing you. And when we have morning breath and all of that, I'm not as attracted to that. So
Yeah. Some people like their partner's body odor. Like it can be very sensual, so
exactly.
yeah.
But that wouldn't be as much of a conflict.
Right, exactly. Okay, so I'm trying to, so let me think. So another client of mine, so she has kind of this tricky situation. She recently in the last year married someone and he has 3 of his own kids. She's got 2 of her own kids, plus kind of another half adopted kid. So she's moved into his home with his kids. And it's been really, really challenging for her because his kids are like, they're all pretty much teen, preteen, and her kids are grown and all, like one's in college, although they're all back home now because the schools are closing down. And her known kind of pattern is people pleaser. That's her compensatory strategy that she grew up with, which is like where she found safety in pleasing others and doing for others. And so one of her struggles has always been putting herself last. And we've really been working on that over the last couple of years, and she's made a lot of shifts. And in this kind of newer marriage and relationship, with his 3 children at home, it's really difficult for her to get space and time. And I've been teaching her how to ask for it and all that stuff. And
Time with him or alone time?
Alone.
Okay,
Alone
gotcha.
time. Because she has a different view of how children should be raised. And so that's a point of contention between them a lot. And then, so sometimes she, not being their mother, she needs to step away, right? She's not their mother. And so I've been really supporting her in that. But I think, like, how would you help her navigate this kind of, if she's a people pleaser and she's even shared that she wants to try to control like how he's raising the kids or be a part of it even, but she's finding like, I have to step back. And she feels guilt around asking him for space. Like if she could have space, like what kind of skill or tool or strategy, or what would you offer to her in terms of like being able to hold her ground in what she needs?
Yeah, I mean, there's many things that I would want to know before just giving kind of broad sweeping kind of feedback around that. But I had just released a week and a half ago an article in response to the current coronavirus, and I was recommending 3 things what could really relate here in that, for people that typically put others first, it's easy to not be as clued in or checked into our own needs.
Right.
And I can say even for myself, there's times where my husband might ask like, how are you doing? Or it seems like something's going on. And I'm like, I don't know, I seem fine. And then if I give myself some space and time to drop in, I'm like, oh, I'm stressed, or I don't even realize
Right.
what it is that I'm needing. So just building that awareness. And I guess it would take a little time for that.
Right.
But the other thing that occurs to me is the second thing I had brought up was intention, right? With blended families, they say it takes sometimes 7 years for there to be a sense of comfort and family. So I don't know how newly married they are. And
like a year and a half, I think, or a year.
Okay.
Really new.
Really new. Okay. So the other thing that happens usually in that terrain is people aren't always clear, particularly as a step parent, of is my role kind of to support the primary parent? Are we co-parenting? Am I kind of a friend or like a confidant to these children? Or what is the role? What is it that the children want my role to be? So there's a lot of uncertainty sometimes. So I don't know if they're having those discussions, but it can be really helpful to be explicit about what the intention is, because that can be a little bit of a guide. Because with that big of a family, there's so many moving parts, there's so many competing needs. So to have some clarity around what my role is, and sometimes that's a progression, right? It's not going to, again, that 7-year window is sometimes we have the intention, but it takes a while to build into that. But between her and her husband, I think if they're on the same page around the value of alone time and what that provides, I think it's an easier conversation to be able to say, how would you feel if I ducked out for an hour or two? And here's what I would love to do. Here's what it would do for me. And here's how it fits with the bigger family picture. And what are your thoughts? And I think that's a different conversation than, this family is so chaotic, I can't even think for a second. I can't even feel myself, and I'm responding to everyone else, and this sucks. And, which might also be true. But again, if we have connection to the why and the emotional need, then he can tune into that more easily than the complaint, because he doesn't quite know what it is and how to help.
Right. So I think that they've gone through many forms of this, and anyway, we won't get into the full story, but what if the person, like, she's expressing why she needs what she needs, but the other person just doesn't understand why that's so important, even if she's saying, I need this. Like, if the other person's like, I don't ever need time, like, I don't understand why you need time, like, I don't need time, I want to be with you, right? Like, I have a lot of clients who share with me about their partners, like, I want to be with you all the time. And so they have a hard time because they feel, number one, they don't want to reject their partner, but they also, and their partner doesn't understand, like, why do you need time? Even if they're saying, like, I just need, like, some peace inside of myself or connection, right? I know that that's a little tricky to navigate. So is there any thought about that, like how to navigate that?
Yeah. I mean, two things come up for me. One is helping educate. This is what I know about myself, and this is what it does for me. And I don't know if you've ever noticed in our being together, when I have had time, how much more engaged I am, or how much more present I am, or how much happier I am. And that's how I want to be. And, it even reminds me of the highly sensitive person trait, that oftentimes people who are not as sensitive don't get that rejuvenation time, don't get that that's a really critical time to process, so that there's an integration, and they're not going to get it. So there is some education that perhaps, again, here's what I understand, here's what's been helpful, here's what it looks like, here's what it looks like when I do get it, here's what it looks like when I don't get it. And then the second point that I'd love to kind of just name here is that so often this seeking closeness and then seeking distance are really points of conflict. Like, I need you, I want you, that can feel scary, or I want to be away. So one thing that can be helpful is, here's when I'm going to be back, or here's, like, it's not like I'm leaving, or I need time, or I need a break, which for some people is like, are we okay? Like, what does that mean? Are we like, do we have an issue here?
Anxious people, right? People with more anxious attachment stuff.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So when there's a real reconnection priority, and when that's going to happen, that can help tolerate some of that.
I like that. So someone else posted a question, and I'm having a hard time. It says see more and I can't open it, but here we go. So my partner just got off an airplane and we are now working at home. I'm concerned about what she's been exposed to, but my ask for distance really hurts her feelings. She keeps coming into my part of the house where I'm working. I don't mean to laugh. I get it, but it's really scary. Even touching things. Again, under normal conditions, this seems reasonable, but now it seems unsafe. How can I communicate my safety concern each time this happens? That's a great question. Thank you for sharing that, Bob.
Yeah, it is challenging. I actually have a client where the wife has a compromised immune system, and her husband and son were in Southeast Asia when this was all happening, and they almost got stuck for 30 days being in Southeast Asia, and they were able to get back, but he had to take a test, and the test results, it's been like a week or longer, I don't know, to get those results. So it's so painful because he was gone and they want to reunite. But they are on the same board or the same page as far as keeping that distance because she has such a high risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for a couple that doesn't have that high risk, I mean, I would, again, if there's any way, so often we think that we're communicating our emotion around I'm scared, here's why I'm scared, or here's what it reminds me of. If, you know, there's sometimes I've had clients that are saying, like, when one person, I had a client just talking about this yesterday, when I watch him be careless or not treat our belongings with care, I freak out a little bit. Like, is he going to treat me with that carelessness? And so I would just invite Bob in this case to consider what this threat brings up in him, right? And I get that it's incredibly important to practice safety measures around not getting the coronavirus. But if there's extra charge for him to kind of just, is it being cared for? Is it, I don't know what could be brought up for him, but if he could tap into that and then be able to share that, I think it could help her soften to him, because that's the primary emotion, again, that's going to draw her close. Because if she's hearing it all, you're not doing it right, or you're not,
or like, don't touch anything, you've been traveling, like, don't come near me, like more of like kind of
criticism of her or somehow correcting her, people tend to push back to that, like, I am being careful, or I am washing, or you didn't see me, I just did this. And then it becomes, again, the rules and how to enforce the rules, which can polarize people.
Yeah, and it sounds like he's concerned, but maybe he hasn't shared why he's concerned, or what his real fears are around possibly getting the virus if she's carrying it. I mean, one of our mutual friends just traveled, and I told her I wouldn't be comfortable seeing her for 14 days, and she's like, I so get it. You know what I mean? So I think it sounds like he needs to maybe communicate his fear, because it sounds like she's taking it personal, of like, he doesn't want to be with her. But if maybe he could tap into more, Bob, maybe if you could tap more right into what he's feeling and his fears and concerns and convey it that way to her, it could land much more softly.
Yeah, because then she probably wants to take care of that. Like, I want to be healthy, or I want to feel safe. And I'm sure she can get into that and buy into that and attune to that. But if it's about what she's not doing right and how she could be doing it better, that's harder to buy into. And the other thing is, you know, people again are getting different information. So it could be a dialogue around, well, here's my way of staying clean, and this is how I think of washing hands and keeping our surfaces clean. Help me with what you're thinking as far as your thoughts around what being clean looks like. And right there could be some difference in meaning making around level of cleanliness. And then it's like, okay, for this period of time, can we kind of have a better way of working together that's more aligned for this period? And again, that brings up the bigger conflict of cleanliness in general. But I think when there's clarity around what it looks like, what does it look like to, I feel like even my husband and I had a conversation like this, like, what does it mean to you when, like, folding the laundry, or like, just, don't know what it looks like from A to Z, or I've had clients talk about
when I leave my shoes by the front door and you
Yes.
Oh, okay. So Anand says, is it okay to be sleeping in separate rooms some nights due to higher anxiety levels and lack of intimacy, and wanting a good quality sleep in order to work well from home?
That's a great question. Yeah, I would say, again, in a nutshell, yes, because with the high arousal that so many of us are feeling with that, just awareness of the threat and the fear and feeling activated in our nervous system. Anything we can do to support regulating our nervous system, getting out of that amygdala part of the brain. And sleep is such an important way of restoring, because it's one of the best ways we can process cortisol, the hormone that is about responding to stress. And especially if our livelihood depends on functioning during the day, and that is kind of, we're adapting and transitioning to working from home, there's some mental energy that's being expended around that adjustment, right? There's distractions, there's all, we're in a new environment and we're having to carve out, and depending on the work. So I think that is a really understandable way of getting that extra sleep, especially if somebody's feeling a lot of anxiety. They might need to do some practices to get into that calmer state before going to sleep. But I would also pair that with kind of what we've been talking about, that again, if we can have more of that deeper emotional conversation, then it's probably going to be way more palatable for her husband or significant other to say, yeah, I get we're both under a lot of stress, and I want you to feel that you're taking care of yourself and your nervous system. And I miss you. Like, I like being able to connect. And if they are quarantined together, then can we carve out some other time to be physically close and cuddle, or whatever it is that would help bring that more of that physical contact that could work for both of them.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. The other thing I was thinking about was, so what if there's a couple that, like one partner is just not as available, like in communication, doesn't connect to like that person's not connected to their emotion. And so like when someone shares how it is for them emotionally, if they're not able to like get it, or they just can't, that's not how they communicate. Like I have a lot of my clients who say, my boyfriend's just so emotionally like disconnected that even if I did communicate that way, like he wouldn't get it, you know what I mean? Or he wouldn't. So I'm wondering, is there like, how do you reach someone like how do you reach that person? Or I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
I know that's kind of a tricky question, but
it's a great question. I mean, I've talked a lot about this on the podcast, the Empowered Relationship podcast. And I just interviewed a guy, and I loved the interview. And he just reaffirmed some of what I'll say through research. So he's up in the Love Lab with John Gottman up in Seattle. And John Gottman's one of the prominent contributors to the field of relationship and couplehood. And what is found is that men who are more emotionally intelligent are a big factor in long-lasting relationships.
Oh.
And what is true is that men, and I think when we were hiking, I was telling you this, that men have such a capacity for emotion, but so often socially, especially adult men, and again, we're speaking stereotypically, but adult men have often gotten a lot of messaging growing up around how it's not okay to cry, to be afraid, and anger is okay, but all the other more vulnerable emotions to be moved or whatever. And so there's some coping strategies that men typically adopt to manage and suppress, not reveal or be private and contained about their emotional world. Now, they do have a profound emotional world, and they're feeling things physiologically. So what often that looks like is a woman in the example you're describing will be kind of tapping in, and she'll be doing her best effort of really offering up and showing the underbelly of what she's feeling, and he doesn't turn towards it.
Right.
And she might think, does he not care? Is he narcissistic? Is he autistic? Like whatever, like all the start, like what's wrong with him? Why can't he attune to me?
Or
rejecting me? He doesn't, And so a couple things, not only is it, he doesn't have a roadmap for how to feel safe in coming into contact with his emotional world, but how to be in relationship with that. And this add the extra layer of family dynamics where how were emotions dealt with as a family. And oftentimes if there's a lot of stress or maybe destructive ways that people are dealing with emotions, then not only is it unfamiliar ground, but it's scary ground.
Yeah.
So there's not a positive frame around having those emotionally intense conversations. So the turn away happens. So I guess what I would encourage for your client in this case is to be in a place of curiosity
Mm.
rather than filling in the blank that he doesn't like. She doesn't have enough information, but she's looking at, he turns away. And that's probably one of the biggest components of relationship breakup and divorce. There's several, but to have your partner turn away and not attune to you, not connect to you is usually really painful.
Yeah.
So slowing down,
Mm.
focusing on curiosity. What happens for you when I share what's really important to me? It's hard for me to tell.
Oh, I
I know
love
we're
that.
not engaging, but I have no idea what's going on for you.
Oh, I love that.
And again, he might not be like, oh, here's what's going on for me, and I'm really clear. It might be like, and I don't know. And it'd be like, would you be willing to think about that or feel into that? And
Mm.
again, so back to the cultural piece, not only often are men given negative feedback around connecting with their emotional world, but women are typically given a lot of support to have these types of interpersonal conversations. And how
Right.
do you feel? So
Right.
there's so much more experience and understanding around how to be in relationship with emotions. So there's so much more I could say, but in a nutshell, I would say be gentle, go slow, create safety, be curious, and perhaps again, look at other supports of maybe listen to that podcast or, be interested in another question would be, what's your belief about having these emotional conversations? Like, what's your association? Do you see that as
Uh,
bad and it leads to nothing but like
Pain and
pain? Where, well, this is how I view it. It's a source of being able to repair and come to resolution and get to know each other on a deeper level. So I'll pause there.
okay, I love
Okay.
it. Love it. Such good stuff. So Reed also asks, what's your best piece of advice for couples now that they're spending so much more time together? So wait, before you answer that, I just want to say for you guys that are just joining us, thank you for joining us. I'm with Dr. Jessica Higgins. She's a relationship expert and coach and therapist as well. She also has a podcast called Empowered Relationship. And so we're just kind of bantering, and she's answering questions around just this time in quarantine with your partner and things that might be coming up and communication and all that. So if you have questions, please post them in the chat box because she'd be happy to answer them. Okay, so let's go back to Reed's question. What's your best piece of advice for couples now that they're spending so much more time together?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, so as we were talking about a moment ago, this is an adjustment period.
Yeah.
So oftentimes people are working from home and they're normally not. And so the routines are being impacted. And I think what I would encourage is just to have, again, some understanding that there's a lot of change in the mix. And again, the reactivity and the fear that we've already talked about. But I would possibly be inviting couples to be explicit about, what do you need today? Or what do you need during this time? How
Yeah.
can we support each other? What's your routine when we're not together? And what is it that really helps you throughout the day? And so there's a lot in what I just said. So to have the individual clarity, and again, sometimes this takes a little pausing, breathing, getting calm to then expand the field of awareness to really check in around what is important to me in any given day. And maybe we go through our routines a little more on autopilot. So what are
Right.
the pieces and the blocks that really matter to me that I'm going to continue to do? And so if both individuals are clear on that, then perhaps it's like, how do we live together when, I mean, some of those things are going to be competing and some are going to be really easily implemented parallelly, if that's a word. And so I mean, I think that if we're taking care of ourselves and we're aware of our routines and what we're needing, and then we're recognizing that our off time, I mean, I would just go back to the basic self-care, like we're getting sleep, we're eating healthy, we're getting outside, we're enjoying, we're playing, we're doing something that brings joy, whether or not it's doing something creative or connecting with other people. But if we're in partnership together around how those are helpful and meaningful, then we can start to develop a flow, which will take time. So I would just be easy with yourself, not judging yourself. If it's not working well, it's okay. We're all calibrating, and to just, again, look at what's the intention, the value, and how to start being in service of that.
Right, right. Awesome. I was just also, as you were talking, thinking about, because there's a lot of couples that don't have children, and then you throw children into the mix with this, with homeschooling, and right. Like my best friend, she lives in San Diego. We've been communicating back and forth a little bit, and she's like, oh, okay, I've dropped the ball and everything. I'm not a teacher. I suck at this. Right. Like there's that of like managing the kids with the homeschool and managing the household and managing your relationship and your own self and all of that. There's like so many moving parts to all of this. And I kind of see it as like when we grew up as kids, it's like, oh, it's like summer vacation, mom and dad are home, or like dad goes to work, mom's home. And it's just like, there's this natural flow of summer vacation, which is completely different because these kids they have to be homeschooled and they have to have some structure.
Yeah.
So like one of my clients, she's really been working on, her husband every day will say, honey, how can I help you? Right? Because she's, not only does she work full time, but she also does all the stuff for the kids. And so I was like, start giving him the list, because if he's asking and you're saying, it's okay, I'll do it, then it's on you. Right? So like, how can couples work together to like, I don't want to say divide and conquer, but kind of divide and conquer and support one another in this kind of new, platform of like how we're living right now.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Kids and
Well,
all that.
I think there's a book. I had a client tell me there's a book around the mental load that women typically carry, which tends to be a lot more domestic awareness, right? Where
Right.
perhaps, again, in a heterosexual relationship, stereotypically the guy will be contributing, but maybe isn't got his mind around all the moving parts and how it all
Right.
fits and the timeline and when things need to happen and
And
all
the
of that
laundry
stuff.
needs to be folded and the dishes need to be washed and the dishwasher needs it, right? Like all that, like you're saying, the domestic type stuff.
Yeah. And with a full-time job and children. And so the mental load of all of that,
Yeah.
I wouldn't underestimate that. And again, I want to reiterate, in a stressful time, our capacity when we're feeling aroused becomes more limited, right? We're not thinking as clearly in our prefrontal cortex, which gives us so much more information and ability to make really good decisions, right? We're in that more like, I got to just like show up and make a quick decision. And it's usually a good decision in protecting, but is it the most supportive decision or the most informed decision? Not
Right.
always, because we haven't really done the whole kind of laying it all out.
Right.
And, I think sometimes I will raise my hand in this as well, that I think there's this desire to perform at such a high level,
Yeah.
and that we have such high expectations of ourselves. I remember telling my husband, I want to like be the breadwinner and a gourmet chef. And I want to be like excellence in all these different areas. And it's not
Just see
real.
you saying that.
Like the intention is there, but when it all is like laid out, it's too much. And this is
So
something,
unrealistic.
yeah. And this is something that I think my husband has a really good voice around, in that he's looking at the one thing
Yeah.
or the two things that are the focus. And so simplifying it. And perhaps, like you said, summer vacation, it's not summer vacation, but can we put a different frame, right? It's not normal life. So to expect it to be normal life might be really hard to execute. So if we can perhaps look at scaling back, maybe we don't have these elaborate dinners, or maybe the kids help
Mhm.
me clean, or maybe as a family we do a family clean, or maybe I lay out all the tasks with my husband and he picks what he wants. And there's different ways of perhaps being efficient, and maybe that means doing less, maybe that means doing one thing, and
Ah, yeah,
it's okay. Like, we're going to get through this. And again, when everything stops, right, so much of our economy is on hold, we're prioritizing safety, we're prioritizing our health.
yeah.
And why would we expect our home to be functioning at this high level when we're all
Right.
prioritizing, we're having to pivot and adjust? So I would just, I think in this recommendation, just know that it's a different time, and
And it's a new norm. It's
it's
like,
a,
I mean, it's temporary, hopefully, but like, we're never going to, I feel like my personal opinion is that we're never going to go back to life the way it used to be, right? We're always going to have, there's something that's going to happen from this time that's going to be in our awareness. And so life will be different. And maybe, we'll have a different perspective on things. Like, a lot of my clients are sharing how, oh my God, I'm shopping so much less. And I realize I don't need that much stuff. And like, a lot of people are getting different perspective around things, right? And
yes.
and I think also, like, and then there's the pressure of, oh my God, I have this time that I'll never get back again. And what can I do? And I need to do this project and that project. And some people just start to jump in their to-do lists. And I'm really encouraging my clients around, like, provide yourself some space too. Like, don't try to do it all. Like, really adjust, give yourself, like you're saying, that adjustment period of, like, figuring out what is our flow now, because it's so different than what it usually is. And like, how do we support one another in the flow and get the kids involved if they're old enough? And
Yes, I want to underscore that so often I feel like, really well intended, we want to entertain our children and feed them. And, I think even at pretty early ages, they can share in stretching, right? Like, mommy needs to stretch. Like, we're
yeah,
going to turn on some music and stretch, or you can
yeah,
put away the spoons. Like, here's a stool. And,
right.
that there's some, again, sometimes that might take a little longer, but there's a shared experience around it.
And I think I mean, I encourage my clients who have kids to have really good boundaries, because I think, as we all know, kids can be very manipulative, and, and they can get whiny. And so I think it's really important to have and hold boundaries with them, and also let them know, let them understand, and let them know why things are important and why it's important that they contribute, and modeling all that. So
Yeah, I want to say one other thing too, that I think being discerning about how much news and social media, because when
yeah,
we're so tapped into everyone else, like, I know we all want to be informed and be compassionate and be of service if possible.
yeah,
And maybe that's something a family could do as well,
yeah,
as a fun activity. But that there's a lot of noise in, not so much noise, but there's some exposure that we're getting that has an impact on our nervous system.
yeah,
And so if perhaps we can turn off some of the devices and
yeah.
simplify things. And my husband went grocery shopping this morning and was like, how was it? Did you have to wait in line? And he's like, yes. And it was really interesting. Nobody was on their phone. And
Oh,
he was like, I wonder if people are a little fried from all the
right,
overwhelm. And so they're just
right.
kind of dropping in a little more and being more just like unplugged. And he was like, it was really cool to see that people had their head up and were
Looking
more.
around, and yeah. Well, interesting. So we have time for one more question, because I actually have an event right after this in a half hour, in like 20 minutes, because we've been on for walks. We started late, um, which is a group virtual gathering with meditation and coaching. So, but interesting we're talking about this, because Lindsay says, I know it's important to my husband to have downtime, which often consists of reading his iPad and tuning into what's happening in the world. I don't want him to feel like I'm needy or taking away his free time, but sometimes I feel he gets lost in his iPad and I feel ignored. How can I ask for more intentional time with connection and less time buried in electronics without triggering a defensive response? So we touched on this earlier, and Lindsay, maybe you weren't on, but Jess, could you kind of reiterate what you were sharing earlier about that?
Yeah. Is the replay or is the video, once we finish, will it be accessible?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe Lindsay can also go back if she's interested and has the time. Well, I mean, I know this. Like, what do they say? The mammalian part of the lizard part of our brain, when we get on like social media or watching something, it's like there's no natural end now. Like, things just
Right.
continue to go to the next show and the next show, and we get
Right.
sucked in. And I think that's normal. So um, it's tricky. Even last night, my husband and I had the intention of having some quality time together. We didn't have it specified around the date, like actual, like at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And the exact same thing happened where I was actually exhausted this week. I've been working a ton. And so I think my energy level was already a little running low, but I was available, tried to communicate. I wasn't giving words, but I showed that I was ready and available. And he's like, I have 10 minutes left on the show. And then he got engrossed in creating this other like little like meme or something. And he was having a blast with it, which was fine. That I was grateful he was having a hard time. But I was like, okay, well, I'm losing my window is like narrowing in. And we didn't have a time to connect. And I gave him some feedback around that. But what I would recommend to Lindsay is really putting it in again, I would love to have some connection time with you.
Yeah.
When can we make that happen? And actually, I know it can feel so formal to put an actual time on it.
Yeah.
But to put a time on it and then make it fun. So it's much more approachable to kind of, whether or not we're going to turn on the music let's say it's 9 o'clock or 8:30, and turn on that music, or light a candle, or do something to shift that space. Because I don't know research around this, but there's something about TV and a device that it just like sucks us in. And so
it's completely mindless. And I think a lot of us are wanting to be mindless and numb right now with that stuff. I know a lot of my clients are, and so there's got to be some kind of, I hate the word balance, but like, with her requesting what she needs, because she also has a judgment around herself of being needy, right? So maybe even expressing that, right? Like, I feel needy when I ask for time with you, and right, like what you're saying, it's so important, and her expressing that feeling of why she needs it.
Yeah. I remember not that long ago, I want to say it was like 6 months ago, I had said to my husband, I want your attention. And he's like,
give it to me.
Well, I was kind about it, but
no, I know, I'm teasing.
It was a foreign request. He had never heard me be so explicit. And he was like, I don't know what you mean. I was like, I just want your focus. I want to, share with you, or, whatever it was. And it can feel really difficult to be so explicit about it. But again, if we can try to turn the complaint or the judgment into an emotional request that is significant, connected to that deeper desire, likely he's going to respond.
Yeah, in a different way.
Yeah.
Okay. One more thing. Well, Reed asked one more question, and actually, this is something that I can also chime in on. And I want to also let people know that, of course, I'm holding my phone up. We couldn't get Zoom on, but this is being recorded. I'm going to send it out. And then also Jessica wrote, she has a great podcast episode to help around this time. And then also she wrote a really good article. And I loved some of the things you put in there for couples to do together.
Yes.
Create more connection. So
like bonding, positive bonding.
Yeah.
And Missy, you know what you could do? I don't know if you would want to do this, but you could take the recording of this.
Yeah.
And replace it with whatever's on Facebook. I don't know if that's possible, but
I'm going to put it up on YouTube, and then
that
way we can all share the link, and you can share the link to your people and all that stuff.
Perfect.
Okay, so last question, then we have to wrap up because I have to jump right into another event here. A lot of people, myself, eat when they get anxious. How can we politely call out our loved ones if we notice their mouths are frequently full? Oh, Reed,
Ah,
you get the star today for questions.
okay. I want to hear what you have to say about that.
I my response to that is you don't call them out. You just don't, because you can express your concern, from a place of like what we've been talking about, like why it's a concern. And this kind of goes back to what my client was sharing around being worried about her boyfriend drinking and all that stuff, right? And so, but like, to be honest, what people put in their mouths, because food is a whole different thing. It's a survival, right? We need it for survival, and a lot of people will turn to food to feel like they're in control. And so, and then also to numb. And so maybe it's just checking in, like, hey, I noticed, maybe you're eating more than usual. Is there something going on? Do you want to share anything with me? Or just asking from a place of just really love and concern. I don't even know if it's concern, but more, but what I find with food is that there's a fine line with how to talk to people about food, especially women, because so much of it is around their weight and their bodies. And a lot of women don't feel good in their bodies and feel confident. And so it's a little bit of a tricky line, but I think more out of just concern for the person, not accusing or not blaming, but just concern.
What do you miss? I'm curious what you think about um, just a question for both of us as a couple. Like, how's your exercise? Like, what have you noticed about exercising since we've been quarantined? Or what have you noticed about food and how you're eating or not? Like, can we both respond to it? I wonder what your
Right.
thoughts are around that.
I like that. I mean, it's so interesting because I've been noticing all this kind of fat shaming going on in social
Yes,
media
I've seen
with
that.
memes. And like I said to my friend the other day, because she posted one, I was like, please stop, like just love yourself, and like just know that this time is right. Like a lot of us are going to turn to food for comfort, and that's okay. Like as long as we are also supporting ourselves in having emotional hygiene, meaning like being able to have a safe space to process our emotions and not just numb out the whole time, right? So, but there is a lot of the fat shaming and food shaming going on right now, and I like what you're saying around, as a couple, checking in around it, and if usually, like I said, the women stereotypically, they're more sensitive around something like this. So I think for men, they're a little bit more like, whatever around food most of the time, not all the time. Um, but I like what you're saying around checking in as a couple. It's
Yeah, it
just
could be around TV, it could be around
anything,
drinking, it could
like
be around
what's
like,
happening. Yeah.
yeah.
In this time of like, what are you noticing, right? For yourself, or like, even so for me personally, like I'm noticing, like I'm not exercising as much. I normally exercise way more. And last night I had to force myself to put on a beach body workout and, in the living room. And it was so hard, but I did it, so it's just stuff like that. And I'm not in a relationship, so I get to talk to Pumpkin about it and see what she thinks. Just kidding. Oh, anyway. Yeah. Any other thoughts about that, or just,
No, no, that's,
I like what you said. Yeah. Cool. Thanks for the questions, Reed. Oh, it's fun. We got Dillian here and Liz.
oh,
Lance is here. Our friend Lance, my friend Lance is here. John said I have to run, but just wanted to say thank you for hosting. It's been very helpful. Awesome. Cool. Amanda's here. Yay. Well, so you guys, please check out Jessica. Tell them where they can find you and all your information and everything.
sure. So drjessicahiggins.com, drjessicahiggins.com. You can find a lot of resources there. And then on your podcast player, Empowered Relationship.
Yes. Her podcast is amazing, you guys. Check it out. And she's got some really good blogs and articles. And thanks so much for spending this time with us and with me, and for supporting couples out there in the world, and just as we all navigate this kind of new terrain that we're in.
For sure. It's been an honor. Thank you for inviting me.
Yay. Thanks. Thanks for joining us, guys.
See ya.
Stay on.